Yes, we need to respond to disasters, but we also need to think about what's driving disasters in the weeks, months, and decades to come. And in this case, we need to think a little bit about climate change and the impact of climate change and on the security and well-being of our fellow Minnesotans and ourselves. Climate change is happening, and while it doesn't cause any specific weather event, it stacks the dice, so to speak, in favor of more extreme weather events. So extreme rain events, floods, extreme droughts, like the 96% of Illinois that's in drought this summer, are more likely to happen under climate change. And as we know at the legislature, these kind of events are extremely costly in the well-being of individuals, families, and communities, and in the well-being of our state budget. I looked at the numbers, and just since I've taken office, the last 6 years, if you add up all the weather-related disasters, we've spent on average $88 million a year. And that's money I think is well spent and important to be spent, and I'm happy that the state can step up and help Minnesotans in that way. But it's also something we as legislators need to be thinking about in the long term.
Representative Knuth, 1 minute, please. Members, if you could, please. Take your conversations to the alcove, or better yet, the retiring room. Representative Knuth, you still have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and members. And I was glad to see in the paper in the Star Tribune a week or so after the Duluth floods an article about Duluth being proactive and wise enough to think about rebuilding their city in a way that reflects the reality of climate change and the impacts of more frequent, stronger rain events, that the impacts that will happen on the community, especially with the kind of topography and geology as was talked about earlier on the floor. And members, Duluth is one city, the state of Minnesota is one state. I also think it's important to recognize that there are other organizations with a much larger reach that are geographically a much larger reach that are dealing with the reality of climate change, planning for it, and wanting to take it on. And the two biggest kinds of groups that I think are taking on the challenge of climate change and planning for our security are the U.S. military. And the U.S. military has done some of the best work on being prepared for climate change and the transition to clean energy. You can read about it in their quadrennial defense review. And a quote from Admiral Joe Nathman, he's a U.S. Navy admiral, retired, former commander of the U.S. Fleet Forces under President George W. Bush. And a quote from him, "There are serious risks to doing nothing about climate change. We can pay now, or we're going to pay a whole lot later." And that, members, we are happy to step up and help our fellow Minnesotans in need in Duluth and the surrounding communities, but we need to be smart about planning for a future where we have more of these kind of catastrophic weather events. The other handout you'll see is a handout from Swiss Re. You may know Swiss Re is the second largest reinsurance company in the world. As you can imagine, insurance companies have major stake in understanding climate change and its impacts because of the claims that they pay out. And so Swiss Re it's clearly a business opportunity for them, but it's also something this company recognizes as a need to promote the security of families and individuals, families, and communities overall. Is one of the world's largest reinsurance companies just this week is trying to foster debate on climate change risks. So members, as we debate, or I don't think we need to necessarily debate, as we move forward on helping our fellow Minnesotans up in the northeastern part of the state, I just ask you to take just a few minutes, maybe do some searching on the internet, talk to some fellow legislators, call up a scientist, and ask them what they think about the impact of climate change and stacking the dice in favor of more catastrophic weather events like the kind that we're here on this floor to deal with today. And today in Minnesota, we're the kind of people who step up and help each other in need, and we put our state budget, our state dollars on the line, on the table to make sure that Minnesotans have what they need to get through and recover and rebuild from a hugely devastating natural disaster. But in the coming weeks and months and years, I hope Minnesotans are the kind of people who are wise enough to plan and to prepare for and to act in the face of climate change. So when these catastrophic weather events come again, we're not having quite so many of them, and we're better able to deal with them in the long term. Thank you.